Hey there, folks. If you don't mind, let us know where you're watching from. We'd really love to hear from you. And if you're enjoying the story, a quick like would mean a lot. It really helps us bring you more of the good stuff. The key turned with a satisfying click. But Dr. Alexander Rivers felt something wrong the moment he stepped inside. December 22nd should have meant twinkling lights and his daughter Ellie's excited chatter about holiday plans. Instead, darkness greeted him. "Melissa?" His voice echoed through the empty foyer. No response. He flipped on the lights. The living room looked staged, like a museum display. No Christmas tree, no decorations, not even the stockings Ellie had hung every year since she was 6. His phone buzzed. A text from his wife. "Everything is fine. Enjoy your lecture trip. G is here." G. Grace, Melissa's 12-year-old daughter from her first marriage. But where was Ellie? Alexander walked through the house, calling his 15-year-old daughter's name. Her room was stripped bare. The anxiety medication she took for PTSD from her mother's car accident, gone. Her favorite books, gone. Even the photo of her deceased mother had vanished. His hands shook as he dialed Ellie's number. The automated voice felt like a punch. "The number you have dialed has been disconnected." Panic rising, Alexander rushed outside. That's when he saw it. A black trash bag by the curb, torn open by cats. Inside lay Ellie's suitcase. His knees hit the concrete as he pulled out her clothes, journals, art supplies. Everything that made Ellie who she was, thrown away like garbage. At the bottom, he found a crumpled note in Melissa's handwriting. "Fresh start, no baggage." The world tilted. He fumbled for his phone, fingers cold and shaking, already starting to dial 911 when it buzzed in his hand. Alexander's phone rang. His sister's number. "Alex, thank God. Ellie's here. She's been here since yesterday. She's in bad shape. She says Melissa told her to leave. Said she was ruining Christmas." Alexander found Ellie curled into the far end of the couch like she was trying to disappear into the fabric. Her knees were drawn up tight, arms around them, the gray blanket wrapped too loosely to keep anyone warm. She didn't turn her head when he stepped inside. Didn't blink. Her hands gripped her phone so tightly, he wondered if she even felt her fingers anymore. Alexander crouched beside the couch, slow, trying not to startle her. "Ellie?" he whispered. Nothing. But her eyes flicked barely when he said her name again. He reached out, and after a second's hesitation, she let him touch her hand. She didn't look at him. "Dad?" Her voice cracked. He pulled her close, feeling her trembling. "I'm here, sweetheart." "She said you agreed, that you wanted a quiet Christmas without me, that I make everything too heavy." Ellie's words came in broken whispers. "She said you needed space from all my problems." Alexander's vision went red. "That's not true. None of that. She packed my stuff while I was at school. When I came home, she had the suitcase by the door. She said the marriage counselor recommended it. That man who used to help me after Mom died, Jason. She said he told her I was toxic for the family dynamic." Jason Walker, Ellie's former therapist, a man Alexander had trusted with his daughter's mental health. "We're going home. Right now." The drive back was silent except for Ellie's sniffles. Alexander's mind raced, pieces clicking into place. Melissa's recent coldness toward Ellie, her insistence that therapy sessions were helping, her new interest in family dynamics. The house was no longer dark when they arrived. Warm light spilled from windows. Christmas music drifted from speakers. The perfect family scene, minus one daughter. "Wait in the car," he told Ellie. "Dad, I don't want to cause trouble." "You're not causing anything." "I am." Alexander stepped into a transformed house. A Christmas tree stood in the corner, perfectly decorated. Stockings hung from the mantel, 2 of them. Grace sat on the couch in a new red dress, and Melissa emerged from the kitchen wearing an apron and a smile that died when she saw him. "Alex, you're back early. How was the conference?" "Where's Ellie's stocking?" Melissa's smile flickered. "What do you mean? Where is my daughter's Christmas stocking? The one that's hung here for 8 years? Grace looked up, sensing tension. Melissa smoothed her apron. "Alex, we need to talk, privately." "No, we talk here. Now." "Where is Ellie?" "She's fine. She's with your sister." "I thought it would be better." "You thought what would be better? Throwing her belongings in the trash, disconnecting her phone, making her think I wanted her gone." Melissa's face hardened. "Don't be dramatic. This is what's best for everyone. Ellie doesn't fit here anymore. She's always been difficult, and after the therapy sessions with Jason, we realized Jason recommended this. Yes. The therapist claimed Ellie's trauma was overwhelming Grace. He insisted she needed distance. Alexander felt something cold settle in his chest. And where exactly was Ellie supposed to process? On the street? At your sister's. It's temporary until we can find the right boarding school. Jason knows some excellent facilities. Boarding school? Alexander's voice was barely a whisper. You want to send my daughter to boarding school? According to him, this was the only solution. Fresh environment, specialized care. Stop saying his name. Melissa blinked, taken aback by the ice in his voice. Where is he right now, Melissa? What? Why would you ask that? Because my daughter is sitting in my car, convinced her father abandoned her while you're playing house with my stepdaughter. So I'm wondering where your therapist friend is tonight. Melissa's face went pale. You're being paranoid. Am I? Grace, honey, can you go to your room for a few minutes? Grace glanced between them, then quickly disappeared upstairs. Now, Alexander said, closing the distance. Let's talk about Jason Walker. Melissa's composure cracked. Alex, you're scaring me. Good, because I'm scared too. Scared of what I'm going to find when I start digging. Scared of how long this has been going on. Scared of what you've done to my daughter. I haven't done anything wrong. You threw a child out of her home 3 days before Christmas and told her it was my idea. What part isn't wrong? Melissa backed toward the kitchen. Ellie needed space. She was becoming too attached. Jason said, there it is again. Jason said. Jason thinks. When did his opinion become more important than mine? He's a professional. He understands trauma. He understands something, all right. Alexander pulled out his phone. Let's call him. Right now. Let's discuss Ellie's treatment plan together. No, you can't just call him. He's busy. At 9:30 on a Thursday night. Doing what? Melissa's mouth opened and closed. I think I'm starting to understand. Alexander walked to the kitchen and began opening drawers. Where do you keep the important papers, Melissa? Bank statements? Credit card bills? What are you doing? Research. You can't just go through our financial records. Our records? Interesting choice of words. He found the filing cabinet. Locked. Where's the key? Alex, please. Let's sit down and talk about this like adults. Adults don't abandon children, Melissa. Adults don't forge signatures on bank documents. He examined the lock. Adults don't steal from their spouses to fund affairs. Alexander looked at her directly. I'm talking about the fact that you won't let me call your therapist friend. I'm talking about the fact that Ellie's treatment suddenly required her removal. I'm talking about the fact that there's no Christmas tree receipt in this house, but there's a perfectly decorated tree here now. He walked to the front window. I'm also talking about the BMW parked 3 houses down that's been there since I got home. The one with the license plate that starts with JDW. Jason David Walker, perhaps? Melissa's face went white. He's watching the house, isn't he? Waiting for me to leave so he can come back. How long has this been going on? How long have you two been planning to get rid of my daughter? It's not like that. Then tell me what it's like. Melissa crumpled into a chair, tears flowing. I love you, Alex. I love our family. But Ellie, she's been so difficult since she turned 15. The nightmares, the mood swings, the way she looks at me like I'm the enemy. Jason helped me see that maybe she'd be happier somewhere else. Somewhere else. Like a boarding school that costs $50,000 a year? How did you? Lucky guess. Where's the money coming from, Melissa? Silence. Where is the money coming from? We have savings. No, we had savings. Where's the money coming from? Alexander walked back to the filing cabinet. The lock was cheap, decorative. One hard yank and it popped open. He pulled out bank statements, credit card bills, investment records. What he found made him cold. A new account in his name, one he'd never opened. Tuition payments to Riverside Academy for troubled youth. Transfer payments to Jason Walker Therapeutic Services. A 3-month advance on a luxury cabin rental. All signed with his forged signature. Jesus Christ, Melissa. Alex, I can explain. Explain what? Explain how you drained our accounts behind my back to pay for this betrayal? Explain how you've been planning this with your lover for months? He's not my lover. Then why is his car still parked down the street? Why are there hotel receipts here from the exact same dates I was at medical conferences? Why is there a receipt for lingerie I've never seen you wear? Melissa started sobbing, but Alexander felt nothing. No sympathy. No regret. Just cold, calculating fury. Here's what's going to happen, he said quietly. You're going to call Jason and tell him to drive away, then you're going to pack your things. Tonight. Alex, please. I'm not finished. Tomorrow morning, you're going to the bank with me to reverse every fraudulent transaction. You're going to confess to the financial crimes you've committed, and you're going to beg my daughter for forgiveness. I can't. You don't understand the position this puts me in. I understand perfectly. You're a criminal. You conspired with a licensed therapist to commit fraud and child abandonment. The only position this puts you in is prison. Melissa stood up, anger replacing tears. You can't prove anything. Can't I? Grace. He called upstairs. Can you come down for a minute? Grace appeared at the top of the stairs, looking frightened. Grace, honey, I need to ask you something important. When I was at my conference last week, did anyone stay here overnight? Grace glanced at her mother, then back at Alexander. I don't want to get anyone in trouble. You won't. I just need to know the truth. Mr. Jason came for dinner. He slept in your room. Mom said you knew about it. She hesitated, then added softly, She told me not to say anything. Said it would hurt your feelings if I brought it up. The final piece clicked into place. Alexander looked at Melissa. Get out. Alex, get out of my house now, before I call the police. You can't throw me out. I live here. You committed fraud using my name. You abandoned my child. You brought your lover into my bed. Try me. Melissa's face twisted into something ugly. Fine, but you'll never get Grace. She's my daughter, and she'll never choose you over me. Grace? Alexander turned to the 12-year-old standing on the stairs. Do you want to stay with me and Ellie, or go with your mother? Grace looked between them, torn. Her lips quivered. I don't know. I love Mom, but... She looked toward the front door where Melissa had gone, then back at Alexander. I don't want Ellie to be alone anymore. The betrayal on Melissa's face was complete. Melissa stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle windows. Alexander waited 30 seconds, then walked to the front window. The BMW was gone. He turned to Grace, still standing on the stairs looking lost. Are you okay, sweetheart? She nodded, wiping her eyes. Is Ellie really coming home? She never left. This is her home. Grace's face crumpled. I'm sorry, Dad. I wanted to tell you about Mr. Jason, but Mom said it would hurt your feelings. She said you were too busy with work to care about us anyway. Alexander sat on the bottom step and pulled Grace into a hug. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. And I always care about you and Ellie. Both of you. Alexander went outside to get Ellie from the car. She was asleep, curled up like a wounded animal. When he gently woke her, she looked around in confusion. Are we really going inside? This is your home, Ellie. It's always been your home. The reunion was awkward at first. Grace stood near the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, her backpack still slung over one shoulder like she wasn't sure she'd stay. Ellie sat at the edge of the couch, knees pressed together, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Neither of them moved. Alexander stood in the kitchen, watching silently as the space between the girls stretched out like a fault line. He didn't interrupt, just set 2 mugs of hot chocolate on the coffee table and stepped back. I didn't know, Grace finally said. Her voice cracked on the last word. Ellie didn't look up. You didn't ask, she said, quiet but flat. I didn't know how. Grace's chin trembled. I thought maybe you wanted to go, that you were angry at me. Mom said it was your decision. Ellie blinked hard once. It wasn't. Then Grace dropped her bag and crossed the room in 3 steps. She sat beside Ellie and reached out, unsure. Ellie didn't lean away. I'm sorry, Grace whispered, for believing her, for not fighting harder. Ellie finally turned toward her, slow. Her face was calm, but her eyes were wet. You're here now. And that was it. Grace collapsed into her, arms wrapping tight. Ellie let her. Didn't hug back right away. But she didn't push her away either. Alexander watched from the hallway, throat tight. He didn't need to say anything. He made hot chocolate and let them talk while he retreated to his office to make phone calls. The first call was to his lawyer, Martin Rodriguez. Alex, it's late. Is everything okay? Martin, I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning. I have a situation involving fraud, forgery, and child endangerment. Jesus, are you safe? Are the kids safe? We're safe. But I need to move fast. My wife has been forging my signature on financial documents, and she conspired with a therapist to remove my daughter from the home. Bring everything you have. Documents, receipts, anything. I'll clear my morning. The second call was to the state medical board. I need to file a complaint against a licensed therapist for ethics violations and potential fraud. Alexander gave them Jason Walker's license number, found on old therapy invoices. He detailed the inappropriate relationship with a client's family member, the financial arrangements, and the recommended removal of a minor from her home. The third call was to his bank. I need to report fraudulent activity on my accounts. By the time he finished making calls, it was past midnight. Both girls had fallen asleep on the couch, Grace's arm protectively around Ellie. Alexander covered them with blankets and went to his bedroom. Melissa's things were gone, but her scent lingered on the pillows. He stripped the bed, threw everything in the washing machine, and made it up with fresh sheets. Then he sat on the edge and let himself feel the full weight of what had happened. His marriage was over. His trust was shattered. His daughter had been traumatized. But they were all safe now, and that was what mattered. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You don't know what you're dealing with. Alexander stared at the message, then typed back, Try me. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then nothing. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and police reports and difficult conversations. Tomorrow would bring the real fight. But tonight, his daughters were home and safe. That was enough for now. Alexander woke at 5 a.m. to his phone ringing. Melissa's number. Alex, we need to talk. I thought I made myself clear last night. You don't understand. He's warning me that you might press charges. You can't just make accusations without proof. Is Jason there with you right now? Silence. I'll take that as a yes. Tell him I said hello. Tell him I'll be seeing him very soon. Alex, please. Let's not make this ugly. We can work something out. It's already ugly, Melissa. You shattered her sense of home. She thought she was unwanted, unloved. I was trying to help her. By stealing from me, by lying to her, by bringing your lover into my bed while my children were in the house. You can't prove any of that. Alexander smiled grimly. Actually, I can. Grace told me about Jason staying over. Your phone records will show the communication, the bank records show the fraud, and I have something else you don't know about. What? Ellie kept a diary, detailed entries about every conversation she had with Jason during therapy, every suggestion he made about her being toxic to the family, every time he asked inappropriate questions about our marriage, every time he recommended she be removed from the home. He could hear Melissa's sharp intake of breath. She also recorded some of their sessions on her phone, the ones where he talked about how much happier you'd be without her around, the ones where he talked about your relationship with him. That's impossible. Patient confidentiality doesn't apply when a therapist is manipulating a minor to benefit his affair with her stepmother. Ellie's 15, Melissa. She's smart. She knew something was wrong. The line went quiet. What do you want? I want you to turn yourself in. Both of you. I want you to confess to the fraud, the forgery, and the conspiracy. And I want you to stay away from my children. And if I don't, then I release everything to the police, the medical board, your employer, and the media. Jason loses his license and probably goes to prison. You lose Grace and any claim to our assets. And everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of people you are. You wouldn't destroy Grace's life just to hurt me. I'm not destroying Grace's life. You already did that. I'm just cleaning up the mess. Melissa hung up. Alexander made breakfast for the girls, keeping his tone light despite the storm brewing around them. Grace picked at her food nervously. Dad, what's going to happen to Mom? I don't know, sweetheart. But whatever happens, you'll be taken care of. I promise. Ellie looked up from her eggs. Is she really not coming back? Do you want her to come back? Ellie considered this seriously. I want the mom who used to help me with homework and make me feel safe. But that person, I don't think she exists anymore. Alexander's heart broke a little more. Maybe she does. Maybe someday she'll remember how to be that person again. But right now, she's not safe for either of you to be around. After breakfast, Alexander drove the girls to school and headed to his lawyer's office. Martin Rodriguez was a family law specialist who'd handled Alexander's previous legal matters. He was also a former prosecutor who understood criminal law. This is bad, Alex. Really bad. Martin spread the documents across his conference table. The financial fraud alone is a felony. Add in the child endangerment and the ethics violations. If this holds, they're both facing real consequences. What about Grace? Can Melissa take her? Not if she's convicted of fraud, and definitely not if Child Services determines that Grace was endangered by the situation. A judge isn't going to give custody to a woman who committed crimes and brought her lover around minor children. What do you recommend? File everything. Police report for the fraud, ethics complaint against the therapist, custody motion for Grace, restraining orders for both girls, hit them with everything at once and hit them hard. Won't that make them desperate? More likely to run or do something stupid? Martin smiled grimly. That's what I'm counting on. Desperate people make mistakes. And when they make mistakes, they give us more evidence. They spent the morning filing paperwork. Police report for the fraud and forgery. Child Services report for the endangerment. Emergency custody motion for Grace. Restraining orders preventing both Melissa and Jason from contacting either girl. By noon, the legal machinery was in motion. Alexander's phone rang as he was leaving the courthouse. Detective Sarah Martinez from the Financial Crimes Unit. Dr. Rivers, we've reviewed your complaint. We'd like to bring you in to give a formal statement this afternoon. And we'd like to speak with your daughters as well, with your permission. Of course, whatever you need. There's something else. We did some preliminary checking on Jason Walker. He's been investigated twice before for inappropriate relationships with clients. No charges were filed, but there's a pattern here. Alexander felt a chill. What kind of pattern? Targeting vulnerable families. Usually women going through divorces or dealing with traumatized children. He insinuates himself as a helper, then manipulates the situation to his advantage. Your case might be the key to stopping him. What do you need from me? Everything you have, and your daughter's testimony about what he said to them. This goes way beyond your family, Dr. Rivers. We think you might have uncovered something much bigger. Alexander picked up the girls from school early, explaining that they needed to speak with a detective. Ellie seemed relieved to finally tell her story. Grace was terrified. Am I in trouble? Grace asked in the car. No, sweetheart, you're not in trouble. You're helping to protect other kids from being hurt the way you and Ellie were hurt. The police station was less intimidating than Alexander expected. Detective Martinez was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a gentle manner that put both girls at ease. I want you to know that you're not in any trouble, she told them. We're here because some adults made bad choices and we need to understand what happened so we can keep other children safe. Ellie's testimony was devastating. She described months of therapy sessions where Jason gradually convinced her that she was harmful to her family's happiness. How he suggested that her trauma from her mother's end was infecting the household. How he recommended that she might be happier in a structured environment away from home. He said Dad would be relieved if I wasn't around to remind him of Mom, Ellie said, tears streaming down her face. He said I was keeping Dad from being happy in his new marriage. Grace's testimony was equally damaging. She described Jason staying overnight multiple times when Alexander was away. How her mother told her it was therapeutic for adults to have special friendships when they were helping families heal. He gave Mom presents, Grace said, jewelry and flowers. He called it therapeutic, that she deserved to feel appreciated for all the hard work she was doing with Ellie. Detective Martinez took careful notes, her expression growing darker with each revelation. Girls, I need to ask you something important. Did Mr. Jason ever touch you inappropriately? Did he ever ask you to keep secrets about things that made you uncomfortable? Both girls shook their heads, but Ellie hesitated. What is it, honey? Alexander asked. He asked me questions about you and Mom, about whether you were happy together, about whether you and Mom, were still romantic. He said it was important for family therapy, but it felt weird. Detective Martinez and Alexander exchanged glances. The pattern was becoming clear. After the interviews, Detective Martinez walked them to the parking lot. Dr. Rivers, we're going to move quickly on this. Based on what your daughters told us, combined with the financial evidence, we have enough for arrest warrants. But I want to warn you, people like Jason Walker don't go down quietly. He's going to fight back, and he's going to try to discredit you and your family. What should I expect? Intimidation tactics. He might try to claim that you're making false accusations to cover up your own problems. He might even try to turn Melissa against you completely, convince her that you're the real threat. She's already turned against me. Maybe, but people in her situation sometimes wake up when they realize how badly they've been manipulated. Don't be surprised if she reaches out to you when the walls start closing in. That evening, Alexander made dinner while the girls did homework at the kitchen table. It almost felt normal, except for the tension hanging in the air. His phone rang. Melissa again. Alex, please don't hang up. What do you want? Jason says you went to the police today. He says you're making serious accusations that could ruin his career. His career should be ruined? He's a hunter. He's not. He helped me see that Ellie needed professional care. He helped me understand that our marriage was in trouble because of the stress. Melissa, listen to yourself. He manipulated you into abandoning a child. He convinced you to steal money from me to pay for it. He seduced you while you were vulnerable and confused. How is any of that helping? You don't understand what it's been like. Ellie's problems, your work schedule, the pressure of trying to blend our families. Jason was the only one who listened to me. I listened to you. I went to marriage counseling. I tried to support you through everything, but you loved her more. You always loved Ellie more than Grace, more than me. Jason helped me see that. Alexander felt something break inside his chest. You're right. I do love Ellie more than I love you. She's my daughter. She's innocent. She's been through more trauma in her 15 years than you've faced in your entire life, and she's still a better person than you turned out to be. How can you say that to me? Because it's true. And deep down, you know it's true. That's why you're so angry, because you know what you did was unforgivable. Melissa started crying. Jason says we should leave town. Start over somewhere else. He says you'll never stop coming after us. He's right about that. Alex, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can get counseling, real counseling. We can make this work. No, we can't, because I don't trust you anymore, because you threw away my daughter like she was garbage, because you brought your lover into my home and made my children lie about it, because you stole from me to fund your betrayal. I'll make it right. I'll pay back the money. With what? You don't have a job anymore? Silence on the line. What do you mean? Your employer received an anonymous tip about your erratic behavior and possible substance issues. Something about missing work for secret therapy appointments and making unusual financial decisions. They're conducting an investigation. You didn't. I didn't have to. Turns out Jason has been calling into your office, claiming to be your doctor and requesting extended leave for your mental health treatment. Without your knowledge, apparently. More silence. Melissa, are you starting to see the pattern here? How Jason has been isolating you from everyone who might question his influence? How he's been making decisions about your life without your input? He was trying to help. He was trying to control you, the same way he controlled his previous sufferers. Previous sufferers? What are you talking about? Ask him about the 2 other ethics investigations. Ask him about the other families he's destroyed. Ask him why he keeps targeting women with teenage children. The line went quiet for a long moment. I have to go, Melissa whispered. Melissa, wait. If you want to make this right, there's still time. Come forward. Tell the truth about what happened. Help us stop him from hurting other families. I can't. You don't understand what he'll do to me if I betray him. What he'll do to you? Melissa, what has he threatened you with? But the line was already dead. Alexander stared at his phone, a new understanding dawning. Melissa wasn't just Jason's lover and co-conspirator. She was his sufferer too. That didn't excuse what she'd done to Ellie, but it explained a lot about how she'd gotten to this point. He was going to destroy Jason Walker. But maybe, just maybe, he could still save Melissa from him. The arrest warrants were executed at dawn on Christmas Eve. Alexander was making pancakes when Detective Martinez called. We got them both. Jason at his apartment, Melissa at a motel outside town. They were planning to run. Alexander felt a surge of satisfaction mixed with sadness. How did Melissa seem? Scared, confused. She kept asking about her daughter. Jason, on the other hand, was arrogant right up until we put the handcuffs on. Started making threats about lawsuits and false accusations. What happens now? Arraignment this afternoon. They'll probably make bail, but there'll be conditions. No contact with you or the girls. No leaving the county. Standard stuff. And Grace? She stays with you. Child Services reviewed the case file and agreed that you're the safest placement. Melissa's parental rights are suspended pending the outcome of the criminal case. After breakfast, Alexander sat the girls down in the living room. Your mother and Jason were arrested this morning. Grace started crying immediately. Ellie just nodded, like she'd been expecting it. What does that mean? Grace asked through her tears. It means they have to go to court and answer for what they did. It means they can't contact us or bother us while the legal process plays out. And it means you're both safe here with me. Is Mom going to prison? I don't know, sweetheart. That depends on a lot of things. But whatever happens, you'll always have a home here. Grace leaned against Alexander's shoulder. I miss the way Mom used to be, before all this started. I know, I miss her too. But the woman we miss, I don't think she's been around for a long time. Ellie spoke up quietly. Do you think she'll get better? In jail, I mean? Do you think she'll remember who she used to be? Maybe. People can change if they want to badly enough, but that's her choice to make, not ours. That afternoon, Alexander and the girls decorated the Christmas tree that Melissa had put up. They hung Ellie's stocking next to Grace's, and Alexander found himself smiling genuinely for the first time in weeks. The girls were starting to act like sisters again. Grace kept apologizing for not speaking up sooner, and Ellie kept reassuring her that none of it was her fault. They were healing each other in ways that therapy never could. Alexander's phone rang. His lawyer. Alex, there's been a development. Melissa wants to meet with you. Absolutely not. Hear me out. She wants to confess. She wants to testify against Jason. But she'll only do it if she can see Grace first. Alexander looked at his daughters, who were arguing good-naturedly about ornament placement. What's the catch? No catch that I can see. The prosecutor thinks her testimony could put Jason away for a long time. Without it, he might get a plea deal and be back on the street in a few years. And if she testifies, full immunity on the financial crimes in exchange for her cooperation. She'll still lose custody of Grace, but she won't go to prison. Alexander considered this. Prison wouldn't undo the damage Melissa had caused, but stopping Jason from hurting other families might mean something. I need to talk to the girls. Of course, but Alex, don't wait too long. Jason's lawyer is already trying to convince him to flip on Melissa. If he testifies first, her immunity offer disappears. That evening, Alexander explained the situation to Grace and Ellie. I want to see her, Grace said immediately. I want to ask her why she did it. Ellie was more hesitant. What if she tries to manipulate us again? What if this is all just another lie? It could be, Alexander admitted, but it could also be her trying to make things right. And either way, you two get to decide what you want to say to her. Will you be there? If you want me to be. Both girls nodded. Then we'll do it, but in a controlled environment with a social worker present, and we leave the moment either of you feels uncomfortable. The meeting was arranged for the next day at the Family Services office. Melissa arrived in handcuffs, looking hollow and exhausted. When she saw Grace, she started crying. Baby, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Grace stood frozen for a moment, then walked over and hugged her mother. I missed you, Mom. I missed you too, more than you know. Ellie hung back, watching warily. Melissa noticed and looked at her with something that might have been shame. Ellie, I don't know how to apologize for what I did to you. There's no excuse. You're right. There isn't. Melissa flinched at the coldness in Ellie's voice, but nodded. I deserve that. I deserve worse than that. Why? Ellie asked. Why did you do it? I thought you loved me. I did love you. I do love you. But Jason, he made me see things differently. He made me believe that you were the reason our family was struggling. He convinced me that you'd be happier somewhere else, and that Grace would be better off without the competition for attention. Competition? I never competed with Grace. I know that now. But Jason had a way of twisting everything, making it seem logical. He said you reminded Alex of his first wife, and that was preventing him from fully committing to our marriage. He said Grace was feeling neglected because you got all the attention for your problems. Grace spoke up. But that's not true. Ellie never made me feel bad. I know, baby. I know that now. But Jason was very convincing. And I was lonely. Alex was working so much, and you girls were growing up and didn't need me as much. And Jason made me feel important. Special. Alexander had remained silent, but now he spoke. Melissa, I need you to understand something. What you're describing, that's how hunters work. They isolate their sufferers from their support systems. They create artificial problems and then offer themselves as the solution. You were manipulated. That doesn't excuse what I did to Ellie. No, it doesn't. But it explains it, and it's why Jason needs to be stopped. Melissa turned to the prosecutor who was present. What do you need from me? Everything. Every conversation, every manipulation tactic, every promise he made, every threat. We need to show the pattern of his behavior. He said if I ever betrayed him, he'd tell everyone that I was an unfit mother, that I'd lose Grace forever. He said he had evidence that I was mentally unstable. What kind of evidence? Recordings of our private sessions, photos of me, vulnerable moments, things I confided in him that he could use against me. The prosecutor exchanged glances with Alexander's lawyer. Miss Rivers, those recordings and photos were obtained illegally. If he tried to use them, he'd only be adding more charges to his case. But I didn't know that. He made me believe he had power over me. Ellie stepped forward. Mom, I recorded some of my sessions with him too. I can share those if it helps. Melissa looked at her stepdaughter with something approaching awe. You were protecting yourself. I was protecting all of us. I just didn't realize it at the time. The trial of Jason Walker became a media sensation. 5 other families came forward with similar stories of manipulation and misuse. The man who had presented himself as a healer was revealed to be a hunter who systematically destroyed families for his own gratification. Melissa's testimony was devastating. She described in detail how Jason had manipulated her into believing that her stepdaughter was a threat to her marriage and her biological daughter's well-being. How he had gradually isolated her from friends and family who might have questioned his influence. How he had used her vulnerability and loneliness to control her completely. She made me believe that I was saving my family, she said on the witness stand. That sacrificing Ellie was the only way to preserve my marriage and protect Grace. I see now that he was destroying everything I actually cared about. Jason's defense tried to paint Melissa as a willing participant who was now lying to save herself. But the pattern evidence from other families was overwhelming, and Ellie's secretly recorded therapy sessions proved that Jason had been planning the manipulation for months. In one particularly damning recording, Jason could be heard saying, "Your stepmother loves you, but she loves Grace more." That's natural. Grace is her real daughter. The question is whether you want to keep causing problems for people who are just trying to be happy. When that recording was played in court, Jason's composure finally cracked. He started shouting about patient confidentiality and illegal recordings, destroying any sympathy the jury might have had for him. The courtroom erupted as Jason leaped from his chair, screaming accusations at the judge and prosecutor. "You don't understand what these people are capable of!" he shouted as bailiffs restrained him. I was trying to save them from themselves. These broken families needed structure, needed someone to make the hard decisions. His outburst revealed the narcissistic delusion that had driven his crimes. Here was a man who genuinely believed that destroying families was therapeutic, that separating children from their parents was merciful. The bailiffs wrestled him back into his seat, but the damage was done. The jury had seen his true nature. Not a misguided therapist, but a cold hunter who felt entitled to tear apart other people's lives. The verdict was swift, guilty on all counts. Fraud, conspiracy, child endangerment, ethics violations, and a dozen other charges related to the other families he'd victimized. Alexander felt savage satisfaction as the judge read each guilty verdict. Every guilty was another nail in Jason's professional coffin, another year added to his sentence, another family vindicated. During sufferer impact statements, one by one, the families Jason had destroyed stood up to tell their stories. A mother whose teenage son had been convinced he was suicidal and needed institutionalization. A father who'd been manipulated into believing his daughter's depression was infectious to his younger children. A woman who'd been convinced to abandon her elderly mother because Jason claimed the stress was damaging her marriage. When it was Ellie's turn to speak, she walked to the podium with her head held high. Ellie sat at the edge of the witness chair, feet barely touching the floor. Her hands were folded in her lap, tight. She didn't look at Melissa. She didn't look at Jason. Only forward, calm, straight-backed, like she'd rehearsed this in her head 1,000 times. because she had. "My name is Ellie," she began. "I'm 14. I live with my dad, or I did, until they sent me away." Her voice didn't tremble. That was what struck Alexander most. She wasn't scared, just tired. Tired in a way a child shouldn't have to be. "I was told I was unstable, too emotional, that I was upsetting my little sister. But I wasn't. I was just trying to understand why my mom didn't want me around anymore." No one moved. Even the court reporter had stopped typing. "Mr. Walker told me I was poison," Ellie said, "that my presence was toxic, that my dad loved me too much and it was damaging the rest of the family." Her words were clinical, like facts on a page. But her eyes didn't blink. "He told my mom that I needed to be away, that it would make everything better. So they packed my things without telling me, put me in a car, sent me to a place with locks on the windows and a camera in the shower hallway." Alexander looked over at Melissa. She was crying now, but he didn't look away from Ellie. "I remember sitting in that car, watching our house disappear behind me, thinking maybe I'd done something wrong. Maybe I really didn't belong anymore. Maybe they were better without me." She paused, took a breath. "I don't need anyone to apologize," she said, her voice still steady. "But I want it on record. Real therapists don't separate families. They heal them." The applause was thunderous, but Jason never looked up. At sentencing, the judge was harsh. "Mr. Walker, you used your position as a trusted mental health professional to prey on vulnerable families. You destroyed relationships, traumatized children, and betrayed the sacred trust placed in you by people seeking help. Your actions were not therapy, they were predation disguised as treatment." The judge leaned forward. "This court sentences you to 25 years in state prison without the possibility of parole for 15 years. You will never practice therapy again. Your licenses are permanently revoked, and you are prohibited from any contact with minors or vulnerable adults upon your eventual release." Alexander watched Jason's face crumble as the reality hit him. 25 years. He would be an old man when he got out, broken and forgotten. Jason was led away in shackles, his career and freedom gone forever. Melissa pled guilty to the financial fraud charges. The DA agreed to a plea deal, 3 years probation, community service, and full forfeiture of custody rights, in exchange for her full cooperation against Jason. The court acknowledged the extent of her manipulation and coercion, but emphasized that her actions still carried consequences. She was allowed only supervised visits with Grace once a month and remained under mandatory psychiatric evaluation. But Alexander's transformation was far from complete. The trial had awakened something dark and calculating within him, something that found satisfaction in watching his enemies suffer complete destruction. Jason's imprisonment wasn't enough. Alexander wanted to ensure the man's legacy was completely erased. Through his medical connections and a private investigator, Alexander discovered that Jason had been hiding assets in offshore accounts, money stolen from previous sufferers over the years. He brought this information to the FBI, resulting in federal money laundering charges that added another decade to Jason's sentence. Alexander also arranged for Jason's doctoral dissertation to be reviewed and ultimately revoked when evidence of plagiarism was discovered. His published research papers were withdrawn from academic journals. Awards he'd received were rescinded. His name was systematically erased from the professional world as if he'd never existed. The private investigator had uncovered something else. Jason had a grown son, David, who worked as a teacher in another state. David had been estranged from his father for years, but still maintained minimal contact. Alexander arranged to meet David under the pretense of discussing his father's crimes. During their conversation, Alexander carefully revealed evidence that suggested David's own childhood had been Jason's first testing ground for manipulation tactics. "Your father didn't just destroy my family," Alexander told him. "He's been perfecting these techniques for decades. The evidence suggests he used similar methods on your mother during your parents' divorce." David's face went pale as Alexander showed him the documented patterns. The way Jason had isolated his first wife from her support system. The way he'd convinced David that his mother was mentally unstable. The boarding school recommendation that had separated David from his mother at age 14. The realization hit David like a physical blow. He'd been Jason's first sufferer, the prototype for all the families that followed. David's response was swift and brutal. He wrote a public letter detailing his father's manipulation of his own family. He gave interviews to local media. He testified before the state licensing board about Jason's huntery behavior toward his own son. Most devastatingly, he visited Jason in prison. "I know what you are," David told his father through the bulletproof glass. "I know what you did to me, to Mom, to all those families. And I want you to know that when you die in that cage, I won't be at your funeral. No one will. Because you never loved anyone, and nobody ever loved you." Jason tried to respond, tried to manipulate his son one last time, but David simply walked away. He legally changed his last name, moved across the country, and never spoke to his father again. Alexander received a call from the prison warden 2 weeks later. Jason had been found in his cell, catatonic, staring at the wall. The prison psychiatrist diagnosed him with complete psychological breakdown. He'd been transferred to the medical ward, where he would likely spend the rest of his sentence as an unresponsive shell. The hunter who'd destroyed so many minds had finally broken completely under the weight of his own evil. With Jason destroyed and Melissa reduced to supervised visits, Alexander could finally focus on rebuilding his family. But the experience had fundamentally changed him. The gentle, trusting man who'd returned from that medical conference was gone, replaced by someone harder, more calculating, and infinitely more protective. Alexander threw himself into his daughters' lives with an intensity that bordered on obsessive. He attended every school event, monitored every friendship, researched every teacher. The girls understood his hypervigilance. They'd been through the same trauma. Ellie, now 16, had grown into a fierce young woman who trusted no one outside their small family circle. She'd started a blog about recognizing manipulation tactics, which had gained a significant following among teenagers. Her writing was sharp and insightful, but carried an edge of cynicism that worried Alexander. Grace, now 13, had become fiercely protective of both her father and sister. She monitored Melissa's monthly visits carefully, reporting anything that seemed manipulative. She'd appointed herself as the family's emotional guardian, a role that carried too much responsibility for someone her age. Alexander recognized the signs. They were all traumatized, all hypervigilant, all struggling to trust anyone outside their tight unit. They needed help, but finding a therapist they could trust felt impossible after Jason's betrayal. It was Ellie who suggested the solution during a family dinner. "What if we help each other? What if we start a support group for families who've been through this kind of manipulation?" The idea grew from there. Alexander used his medical connections to partner with legitimate family therapy organizations. They created a support group specifically for families who'd been victimized by mental health professionals. The first meeting was small, just 3 families including theirs, but word spread quickly through networks and online forums. Within 6 months, they were running multiple groups across the state, with Alexander serving as the medical advisor and Ellie and Grace sharing their story as peer counselors. The work was healing for all of them. Helping other families recognize and recover from manipulation gave their trauma meaning and purpose. They learned that their experience, while devastating, had given them unique insights into how hunters operate and how families can protect themselves. But Alexander had also developed a network of private investigators, lawyers, and medical professionals who helped him investigate anyone who showed interest in his family or his practice. He conducted background checks on teachers, coaches, tutors, even the families of his daughter's friends. His medical practice became a model of protective protocols. Every new hire underwent extensive background screening. Patient interactions were carefully monitored. Therapy referrals were made only to vetted professionals with impeccable reputations. 5 years after that Christmas Eve, when his world fell apart, Dr. Alexander Rivers received a call that brought everything full circle. Ellie had just turned 21, now a senior at university. Grace was 18, accepted into law school, sharper than ever. That call was about Jason Walker. He was dead. The prison warden explained that Jason had never recovered from his psychological breakdown. He'd spent his final years as a hollow shell, unable to recognize visitors or respond to stimuli. He died alone in the prison medical ward with no one to claim his body. Alexander felt nothing, no satisfaction, no relief, no closure. Jason had become irrelevant years ago, a ghost from a nightmare they'd all moved beyond. He shared the news with his daughters over dinner that night. Ellie, now 21 and a college senior, had grown into a remarkable young woman. Grace, 18 and college-bound, was planning to study law and eventually prosecute crimes against children. "I keep thinking about something," Grace said after they'd absorbed the news. "Remember how he used to say that he was helping families heal? That he was making us stronger? What about it? Alexander asked. In a weird way, he was right. Not the way he meant it, but what we went through made us who we are, made us fighters, made us protectors of other families. Ellie nodded. His evil became our purpose. His destruction became our construction. Grace raised her water glass in a toast. To the family that couldn't be broken. To the family that couldn't be broken, they echoed. Outside, snow was beginning to fall. The first snow of another Christmas season. But this time, the house was warm and bright, filled with love.